So inshallah ta'ala, I'll start. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. As always, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I find each one of you in good health, wealth, and iman. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that our loved ones during this time are safe, their health is good. If any one of our family members are suffering from the current pandemic, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them shifa. If any one of our brothers or sisters have been affected by this situation where they've lost a job, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He puts barakah in their rizq and that they find something soon, inshallah. Just one thing at the top of my head, alhamdulillah, due to technology, it's been a blessing because we've all been able to still stay connected, even though the masjids are closed. But because of the blessing of technology, we're able to connect with each other and find reminders that are beneficial and gets us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So before I start, I just wanted to announce, and I'll announce this again at the end of this short reminder, our dear brother, Tariq Altaf, his mother passed away, a dear brother of ours, a brother from our, he's a brother from our community. His mother passed away. So we prayed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant his mother the highest level of Jannah, that she enters Jannah immediately. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that whatever difficulties and pain, obviously, Tariq Bhai is feeling, his siblings, his relatives are feeling, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give him and his family the patience to get through this difficulty, inshallah ta'ala. So going back to this talk, as I mentioned earlier, this technology has been a really great source of a blessing, that just on a community level, we're able to stay connected. On a spiritual level, we're providing reminders that are beneficial and are getting us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Ramadan gets closer, I've been, listening to a lot of talks and, reaching out to different scholars, and, there's been an interesting conversation that's been taking place on social media that this might be one of the best Ramadans due to isolation. And, just to be honest, it in regards to from a community's perspective, it probably won't be. It'll be very, very difficult. Inshallah ta'ala, next Thursday, we would have been, it will be the first night of, Ramadan, and we going to the masjid and preparing and the excitement of worship. So this year we won't be able to experience that, just from a personal perspective, like going to the masjid and seeing Sherry and Aslan. They're usually normally waiting for me at the door, or meeting Naeem uncle and Kazam uncle. They're usually sitting in the first saf, right next to us, or seeing Munib Bhai or Dr. Mehboob or Mozim Bhai or Dr. Asad, just coming together and praying together, just from a personal point also, when leading the Taraweeh, I have to say, it's like the only time where I feel my heart is really beating, or, when alhamdulillah, when Rasha and Alia organize these youth qiyams, they're really exciting. Especially, when we have our khatam night. I noticed every year our community is becoming The Unity Center community is becoming, it's becoming larger. It's growing. I feel, the capacity of the masjid, the community sort of outgrown the capacity of the masjid. So, this is something that unfortunately we won't be able to experience on a community perspective, but something in regards to our iman, our faith, is something that's in our hearts and our minds. So it essentially, we don't technically need to be anywhere, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of our He's aware of the conditions that we're in. So just keeping that in mind, inshallah ta'ala, as we start to prepare for Ramadan, and we prepare for Ramadan and get in the right mindset, I just wanted to review how we can take advantage of Ramadan properly, having the right mindset and, mentally being prepared. And that normally in regards to having that Ramadan mindset, it usually falls into two groups. I see this every year. This is something that I experience myself. Normally, the first group of people, they're very confident. They know exactly what they want to accomplish in Ramadan. They know that they're going to worship a certain amount of hours during Ramadan. They know they're going to be waking up for tahajjud and worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They know they're going to complete certain amounts of Quran by the end of Ramadan. They know certain qualities that they want to acquire and benefit from. And then there's a second group of Ramadan, and I think, to be honest, I put myself in that group too. We say this very, it says with a lot of, it's a very condescending way of saying it. Oh, Ramadan Muslim. It's meant to be said with a lot of snark, because in the month of Ramadan, it's easier to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for this group, when they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's this guilt in their hearts because they know after Ramadan, they're not going to feel that sense of connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to be the same. And at times, because of that feeling in their hearts, they consider themselves very hypocritical. During Ramadan, it's easier for them to pray 5 times a day. During Ramadan, it's easier for them to be on their best behavior. During Ramadan, it's easier for them to recite more Quran. And right after Ramadan, a week later or 2 weeks later, their iman starts to decline. And I would tell you that's something natural. That's something normal. There was a companion by the name of Hanzala radiyallahu anhu. When he would be with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his faith would be at the highest. And why wouldn't it be? He would be with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His faith, his connection with Allah would be the highest. But when he would return home, his iman would decrease. That feeling that he had when he was with the Prophet, it would be very different when he would be home. So then he started to tell himself, what, I think I've become a hypocrite. And he's walking outside and he finds Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and he tells him that, I think I'm a hypocrite. And he's like, why is that? He goes, when I'm with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I feel a certain way, but when I come home, my faith decreases. And they went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised them both, no, faith, iman fluctuates, it goes up and down. So there's nothing wrong about, worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala properly in the month of Ramadan, or coining that phrase, a Ramadan Muslim. If you think about it, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, everybody increases their worship during the month of Ramadan. So during the month of Ramadan, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was even more generous during Ramadan. So in the essence, we're all Ramadan Muslims. So I wanted to tell my brothers and sisters, when you go in the month of Ramadan, don't feel this sense of guilt. Well, during this month, I feel it's so much easier to worship Allah. But then outside of Ramadan, my faith starts to decrease. I understand that feeling. You pray for 30 days, you're praying Fajr, Zohar, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and you feel this sense of, connection with Allah. And then Ramadan ends, and then a week later we miss our first Fajr prayer. It's it's a very tough pill to swallow, but it's our responsibility that we're consistent and we keep moving forward. And if we fall down, then we get right back up and we keep trying our hardest. So I wanted to, remind the brothers and sisters in the month of Ramadan, have that right mindset, and don't feel discouraged that, it's easier for you to worship in the month of Ramadan, or if I am a Ramadan Muslim, because in reality, we're all Ramadan Muslims. So inshallah ta'ala, what's the objective during the month of Ramadan? When we're fasting, we feel all different ranges of emotions. A feeling of gratitude is the obvious one, because we're not eating, and automatically during that time, we feel, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us so much, even during this crisis right now. Alhamdulillah, I've been working from home for the past 5 weeks. And I have no right to, be ungrateful for that, because for somebody else, they might be experiencing something else, or somebody who's lost a job. So it's natural in the month of Ramadan, we feel a sense of gratitude. But that feeling of gratitude, that's not the objective of Ramadan, it's something else. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us what's the objective in Surah Al-Baqarah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. O you who believe, fasting has been decreed upon you so that you can become, God conscious. This word, so what the objective of Ramadan is that we become the people of taqwa. And taqwa is a very interesting word. It's something that's been mentioned in the Quran over and over again. Some people translate the word taqwa as fear. Another translation is God consciousness. And to be honest, I don't, God consciousness is a very fancy word. Just to simplify it, God consciousness means something that we constantly think about. Something that we love, something that never escapes our mind. So, for instance, when we're kids, we always think about our parents. When we get married, we think about our spouse. When we have children, we always think about them. So, God consciousness, or taqwa, to simplify, it's something that we constantly think about. But there's also another meaning of taqwa. It also means a shield, something that protects. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, he asked one of the companions, Ubay radiallahu anhu, what is taqwa? What does that mean? And he said, and he provides an imagery, and he says, Umar, have you ever traveled on a thorny path? When you're walking in the garden and there's some plants there, they have thorns there. And when you walk on a thorny path, you're very careful to not get hurt. And he goes, that is taqwa, that you're very cautious, you protect yourself. So essence, we're protecting ourselves, we're being mindful of things that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. We're taqwa is basically putting what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for us as a priority. And taqwa, it's an internal state to see what I'm doing to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What am I doing? So for instance, in the month of Ramadan, all things that are permissible for us become impermissible, like eating and drinking during fasting, because we're worshiping throughout the night, so we're not sleeping as much. But what type of fulfillment are we getting? We're getting fulfillment through our worship, through our namaz, through our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the objective and the goal of Ramadan is to obtain taqwa. And a great famous spiritual philosopher by the name of Ibn Ata'Allah said, Normally when we're fasting, and there's so many virtues of fasting and how many good deeds we're going to get, but I want you all to think beyond that, because he said something beautiful. He said sometimes the reward of seeking good is the good itself. Meaning that the the objective of Ramadan, yes, we're going to get a certain amount of rewards of doing good deeds, but the accomplishment we get is just by doing the good deeds. The feeling that we get closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through worshiping Him is the good deed. Because spirituality, it's not a transaction, it's an experience. So during this month of Ramadan, this is the objective, that we gain this taqwa, this constant awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a priority in our lives? How do we constantly become better for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How do we, find this joy in doing good? And then the ayahs continue on in regards to Ramadan. And what is one way of finding this closeness, this nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides that in the Quran too. And He says, شَهْرُ رَمَضَانَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنُ هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ. The month of Ramadan is that in which was revealed the Quran, a guidance for the people. So this month of Ramadan is a means for us to be connected with the Quran, that we engage the Quran, that we read the Quran and we understand the Quran. It's a very famous hadith. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the best amongst you are the ones who learn the Quran and teach it to others. And one of the reasons why the one who is described being the best amongst you, who learns and teaches us the Quran, because when you fully engage the Quran, it has a transformative effect on a person. It affects our hearts, it affects our minds, it affects our speech, it starts to affect our behavior. And when a person truly engages and understands the Quran, then they start to exhibit Quranic qualities. For instance, kindness, mercy, generosity, humility, simplicity, sympathy. They start to exhibit the qualities of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Someone asked Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha, after the Prophet passed away, they asked her, what was the characteristics of the Prophet? What was his character? How was he? How was the Prophet's character? And she responded by saying, his character was the Quran. SubhanAllah, beautiful. That everything the Quran represented, that was his character. So when we study the Quran and understand it, and we start to follow, when we follow what the Quran is teaching us, then we start to develop the Prophet's characteristics. So, in the month of Ramadan, many of us might have different objectives in regards to the relationship with the Quran. Some people, some of us might have the objective of, I want to complete one entire Quran, just, looking and reading it. And that's perfectly fine. If I'll just give you some simple remedies or ways about doing that. Maybe if after every salah, if you read 1/4 of a juz or a sapara, by the end of the night you'll be able to complete 1 1/4, and you'll easily finish the Quran in the month of Ramadan. Some people might have a little bit more ambition. They say, I want to complete 2 or 3 Qurans. That's perfectly fine. Maybe for somebody else, that's too much. Maybe they might need to do it as a complete family, and that's fine too. Or somebody else's objective might be, this year I want to spend more time understanding the Quran. So your goal would be, just to read a few ayahs and then just understand it and dwell upon it. So alhamdulillah, there's so many resources online, so many organizations, Qalam Institute, Mifta Institute, Institute of Knowledge. There's so many resources where you can hear, tafasir of the Quran, Dr. Ishar Ahmed for the Urdu speakers. And, from each of our countries, either being the Arab countries or India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, you'll find all sorts of resources. something beautiful, just Surah Al-Asr, 3 ayahs. That's the surah we read when we're in a hurry, when we need to be somewhere. And, a few years ago, I completed the tafsir of Surah Al-Asr, and it was about 14 hours of tafsir of just that small surah. So that's somebody's objective during Ramadan, that they want to spend more time understanding the Quran, and what a noble cause, what a noble goal to have, and that should be each of our objectives. So read a few ayahs and then understand the Quran, and then somebody else's other objective should be that we want to spend more time memorizing the Quran. And I usually get this every year after during Tarawih, mashallah, I want to become a hafiz, or I want to memorize some surahs, or I want to memorize Surah Yasin, or I want to memorize certain surahs. Like, I'll give you an example. Surah Al-Mulk has 30 ayahs. If you memorize one ayah every single day, you'll be able to accomplish that. And then I also get this also, I there's adults that I meet all the time, and they say, I'm of a certain age and I never learned to read the Quran, and is that something that's possible? Can I do it? And I said, most definitely, it is possible. And when there's a will, there's a way. And I say this to everybody else, especially in regards to religious studies. Don't look for comfort. Don't look for comfort. Go out of your way and struggle for this religion. Struggle for like learning Quran, and put in the time. Inshallah ta'ala, you'll see the fruits of your labor. Alhamdulillah, I've been teaching Quran for a certain amount of years, and I tell this to all my students, like, when we try to learn this religion, or memorizing Quran or anything in regards to hadith, don't look for luxury, don't look for comfort, because if you on each of our phones we have the entire Quran, we have it on translation. You can go to any masjid in the world and you can find all the books of the hadith, but unfortunately it still hasn't penetrated our hearts. Why? Because this religion, or the acquiring of knowledge of this religion, it requires some effort. Think about it, that our predecessors, our religious predecessors, they used to travel just for a month's journey just to learn one hadith. Amazing. Just to learn one hadith. I could just go on Google right now and pull up all of Bukhari. But there's a difference. Those people put in their time. They put in their time. And I say this to all the adult learners who haven't learned who haven't learned how to read. I'm telling you, you can do it. I mentioned this last time at a khutbah I gave at Unity Center of a dear brother, Noman. He's somebody that I taught 12 years ago. So when I was teaching Quran, I put out flyers all over the valley at all the restaurants. Whoever wants to learn Quran, give me a call and I'll come and teach you. And 9 out of 10 times, I would always get phone calls of parents wanting them for me to teach their children. But then one time I got a phone call of an adult man. His name was, Noman, brother Noman. And he says that, do you teach adults? And I was like, yeah, I teach adults. He's like, can you teach me the basics? Meaning alif, ba, ta, tha, alif, zabar, a, the complete basics. And I was like, yeah, of course. And so we set up a date, and then I went to his house, a beautiful house here in Northridge. And I remember when I walked into his house, and he was sitting in the dining table, I was kind of taken back because, Noman Bhai, he was waiting for me at his dining table, but he had tubes in his nose, and I can tell that he was using this machine to help him breathe. So I went there, and in the beginning, it was a very formal relationship. I didn't ask him, why, if he's sick or not, just to privacy issues, or not to make him feel bad. So, I started teaching him, and, within 6 months, we became very good friends. And, so I after 6 months, I asked him, Noman Bhai, what happened? why are what, is there some sort of condition that you're going through? And he's like, yeah, a year ago or whatever, a while back, his lungs stopped working, and that he needed a machine to help him breathe. And because of his sickness, he looked very tired. And I remember walking in his house, and he would have this picture of him, and he was so handsome. He was handsome then too, but I can just tell his sickness took a toll on him. So then I asked him, I was like, Noman Bhai, what's your educational background? And this is where I was shocked. He's like, Junaid, I have a PhD from Aligarh University. I was like, what? A PhD? He's like, yeah, my wife's also a PhD from Aligarh University. I was like, what do you do professionally? He goes, I'm the vice president of Nestle. The Nestle, the candy bar. They have a company out in Glendale. He goes, I'm the vice president of the IT department. I was like, subhanallah. It's like, no, like, what am I teaching you for? It's like the roles should be reversed. He's like, no, Junaid, when I was younger, I really didn't, I wasn't too inclined about learning religion. And now, since I've gotten sick, and it was always a dream of my mother to learn the Quran. And he goes, that's why, I'm doing it now. And I remember one lesson when I was teaching him the rules of reading, Allah's name. When a fatha or a dhamma letter is being connected to Allah's name, you say it with power. And, I said, Allah. And he was spelling that out, and he started to cry. And I was like, Noman Bhai, why are you crying? He goes, alhamdulillah, he goes, this is my first time in my adult life that I recited Allah's name. And I was like, whoa, subhanallah. But during that sickness, he was able to accomplish that goal. He was able to learn the Quran. A few years ago, he passed away, and I have this comfort in my heart knowing that he accomplished his goal. So, for those of us who don't know how to read the Quran, don't look for comfort. Believe me, if there's a will, there's a way. Go out and do it and accomplish it. If you need help, give me a call. I'll help you out. I'll leave my email address, and you guys can call me if you need help with memorization or anything. Please let me know. During the month of Ramadan, I will be available, inshallah. And one last thing, as we're worshiping and we're having our connection with the Quran, there's one thing I want you guys to be extremely attentive of during Ramadan. Normally in the month of Ramadan, we become more charitable. In the month of Ramadan, during these times, the month of Ramadan, we usually give our zakah. And I ask you all, this time, do not skip out on your zakah. And please make sure to be even more charitable during this time. As I mentioned earlier, everybody, we're under quarantine and we're staying home, and everybody's experience is very, very different. We have a family group chat. We keep sharing pictures of what we cooked today. And, and I'm sure there are people in the world who are struggling to find the next meal. So it is imperative that we don't take giving zakah or even sadaqah lightly, and we give it. And we make sure we fulfill that obligation. It's very, very important that we fulfill that obligation, that we're extremely charitable during this time. Someone asked Maulana Rumi a very trivial question. Sometimes we ask these questions, right? So someone asked him, what kind of music is haram? And he gave a beautiful response. So someone asked him, what kind of music is haram? And he responded by saying, the rich people's sounds of pots and pans, and they're cooking food, and the poor people can hear it, but there's no share for them. Subhanallah. Meaning, we're living very comfortable in our homes, but we're not mindful for what the people outside are going through. And that's not the identity of the Muslim. Because the Prophet ﷺ, when describing the believers, he said they're like the brick of the same body. The believer for another believer is like a building. We're all connected. So the most virtuous thing that we can do is to help a brother and sister in need and make them happy. If they need food, we give them food. If they need any assistance, we will give them assistance. It's something very difficult to give up something that we like and we love. And especially now, like, when they told, this pandemic was going on, and everybody went to the grocery stores and cleaned out the, aisles, and there was nothing available. This is not the behavior of a Muslim, right? We're mindful of that. We should get enough and make sure that it can be well distributed amongst the community. So when we're paying zakah, it's important, and or sadaqah, but imperatively, because I'm saying zakah specifically because normally in the month of Ramadan people pay their zakah. So this year, please do not miss out on that. Is that who's first in line? It's your family members, your families who should be eligible, or who should be a priority. It should be the orphans, the poor, the destitute. It's important that we look out for them, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, none of you will truly believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. And that's something that the companions, they didn't take that lightly. They took it very seriously, and it was something close to their heart. The son of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, he never had a meal unless he shared it with an orphan. Subhanallah. Every meal that he had, he made to share it with an orphan. Saying once again, the son of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, whenever he got attached to something, he was worried this attachment to this object is going to get between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he would go out of his way and he would give that thing that he loved the most, and he would give it away in charity. So it's imperative that we're giving charity, and we're making sure. And this is the most important point that I wanted to make, is that when you give charity, make sure you go and give it with your own hands. I know, like right now, we can do it online and give it to somebody, or if that's the only avenue that we have, then that's fine, right? But it's very, very important that we give it with our own hands, and we try to feel what people are feeling. We understand what their conditions are. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, someone came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, what? I have a hard heart. What should I do? What are ways that I can make my heart soft? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, feed the hungry and pat your hand over the orphan's head. Because when you see that, it makes you feel something different. It makes you realize, it's my obligation to pay it forward. I share something with you. When I was studying in madrasa in Karachi in 1990, it was a large madrasa, over 2,000 students. And, we had a section for the foreigners who, came from the United States, England, Australia, all over Africa, Canada, all of Europe. And, our facilities were top class, and, we had our own chef, and, we had our own living area. But then there's the other side of the madrasa, which was normally for the orphans, for orphans or for poor people. And in majority of people in Pakistan, they would send their kids to the madrasa because it was a free education. And every year people would come to our madrasa and give their zakah. They would literally give their zakah one by one, and they would be this long line of thousands of kids, and they would give them their zakah. So one time, someone came to our madrasa, and he said that, I want to give my zakat to the poor people, but I also want to give sadaqah, some, voluntary charity to the foreigner kids too. And so our teacher said, you guys can go and stand in line too. So we were all standing in line, and I remember this vividly. It stayed with me forever. There was a young boy who was in front of me in the line, and he was from Swat, the northwestern area of Pakistan. And he was a beautiful boy, blonde hair, green eyes. It's not something common to see in Karachi. A young boy, he must have been 5 or 6 years old. So when the man was giving out charity, when he saw that boy, he gave him the money, and then he hugged him. He hugged him and he kissed him. And as he was hugging him, the boy started to cry. The boy started to cry, and he gave the money back. And he's like, why did you give the money back? He goes, since my parents have passed away, this is the first time somebody has hugged me. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. So make it a habit when you give charity that you go and give it with your own hands. So you understand the value of what you're giving and what it means for other people. Don't underestimate that. And I say that again, make it a habit. Make sure you give your charity and you give it in the month of Ramadan. Give your sadaqah and make sure you're attentive about it and you don't skip out on it. So like I said, in this month, next Thursday, most likely everybody will be doing Taraweeh, and we won't be doing Taraweeh in our masjid, but we will still be doing Taraweeh at home, inshallah ta'ala. So, I just wanted to go over some simple guidelines as to how you can do that at home. And follow that same format. Normally do Taraweeh right after Isha prayer. So pray, as a family, pray Isha prayer together. As a unit, pray Isha prayer as a unit, pray together, pray your 2 rakah sunnah, and then start, do your Taraweeh prayer. I wanted to share an image with you as to how you can create yourselves. I don't know if you can see that. Like, so for example, if option A, if a father and son are doing it together, then that's how you would do your set up your congregation prayer. If it's father and 2 sons, then the 2 boys would be standing in the back. If it's a husband and wife or a daughter, then that's how you would set it up. If it's a father, son, and a mother, that's option D would be the scenario. And then if it's the father's leading the prayer, then the if there's sons, and then the wife. So you get an idea as to how you would be setting up the prayers accordingly. If you want, I can share this image with you, and we can add that in the email. Now, in regards to how many rakats we should be doing, in the masjid, everywhere in the world, we do 20 rakats, and that's an established sunnah of the companions, that they would pray 20 rakats. So if you can pray those 20 rakats, inshallah ta'ala. If you can't, then just do as much as you can, but that's your goal. You would want to do 20 rakats. Now, in regards to, a lot of, most of us, we know a certain amount of surahs. I would say the average people, or majority of the people, they know from Surah Al-Fil to Surah An-Nas. So that's 10 surahs. So that's how you would do that. You would read, Fil to Nas, that would cover 10 rakats, and then you would redo those 10 surahs again for the last 20 rakats. So you could do it like that. So you would do Surah Al-Fil in the first rakat, Surah Al-Quraysh in the second rakat. In the third rakat, you would do Surah Al-Ma'un, fourth rakat, Kawthar, so on and so forth. Let's say if you only know 4 surahs, then you just keep repeating those surahs. So read as much as you can, inshallah ta'ala, so in regards to the surahs. Another question that's come up is that, if I'm doing Taraweeh at home, can I hold the Mus'haf? Can I hold the Quran, open it, and read from it? Due to different madhabs, they have different understandings. I know from the Shafi fiqh, it is something that is allowed, but according to the Hanafi fiqh, which is majority of the people from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, we follow the Hanafi fiqh, and that is something that's not acceptable, because under that fiqh, when you're moving the pages or too much movement in the prayer can break the prayer. So if you're from the Hanafi fiqh, this is something that's not allowed. But if you follow the Shafi fiqh, that is something that is permissible. Another question that was arise is that, can we follow a virtual Taraweeh? If somebody's leading Taraweeh online, can we follow along? This is also not acceptable, because you need to have the prayer lines in order. So there's a breakage in line, right? Not only that, but let's say there's different timetables. If you're following somebody from a different timetable, it's just not gonna link up. So it's important that try to establish the Taraweehs at home. Do them yourselves. Do it with your family. Inshallah ta'ala, it's something that it will be a benefit. And not only that, but it's a good way to brush up on your surahs. As I'm ending this talk, I just wanted to make a few announcements. One is that once again, our dear brother Tariq Al-Taf, his mother passed away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive her sins, accept her deeds, and give her family members the patience to get through this difficulty. Secondly is in regards to fundraising. Inshallah ta'ala, this pandemic is going to be over soon, but it's imperative that when it's over, we still have our masjid there. It's important, my brothers and sisters, that we manage our masjid properly and we support it financially. Because right now, CARE did they took a poll and they said that 80% of people who go to Jummah prayer don't even pay, they don't give any sadaqah, they don't give any charity. So that's only 20% of people. And now we don't even have Jummah. So it's imperative that we donate towards the masjid. We give to the masjid. And we give to it without asking. I know that we have a goal right now of $30,000, and I say let's surpass that. Let's surpass that, inshallah ta'ala. Let's surpass that to make sure, inshallah ta'ala, when this is all over with, that our masjid is still there, right? It's important that we manage our masjid and we make sure that our masjid is taken care of, not just for us, for our children and their children. Because this, the masjid is a place where we all come together and where we're all connected, inshallah. So please, give without, anyone asking, and give, inshallah. And give whatever amount that you can give. Don't think that any small amount is irrelevant. That's not the case. Your intentions are right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what you're going through, and you can only give what within your capacity, then give, inshallah. A few other announcements I wanted to share. Inshallah ta'ala, there's a online enrichment learning project. The program's called How a Bill Becomes a Law. Inshallah, it will be led by Dr. Mehboob. This is for 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. All the information is on the email, so please have your child register, inshallah. The other announcement is, inshallah, later on today, our dear brother, Dr. Umar Abidin, is going to be having a workshop in regards to having a productive Ramadan. So that's going to be 5 p.m. today. The Zoom link is in the email. And then also tomorrow's, which is Saturday at 5 p.m., we're having another workshop called Emotional Well-Being during the COVID-19 crisis. We're going to have a Dr. Sharmeen Jahan, who is a board-certified child psychiatrist. So please go ahead and join. It's it's very important that we still stay connected during this time. So these programs that the masjids are providing is a way for us to stay engaged as a community. Inshallah ta'ala, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that each one of you has an excellent Ramadan and you find this fulfillment and this special connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Qur'an al-azim wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-hakim. Astaghfirullah li wa lakum wa li sa'iril muslimin fastaghfiru innahu huwal ghafurur rahim. Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum.